Welcome back to Farms and Frontlines, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Max Terzano, and I am happy to once again be joined by Jess Rudo. Jess, you were at Hershey Park. I know it was probably a struggle, but you made it.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I don't
believe
think
it.
I've ever been there. Yeah.
I've driven past it, and every time I drive past, my wife is like, "Oh, Hershey Park is the best. We should go." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I agree." And then
you don't.
Still haven't gone. Yep. So got to get back there. Anyway, I did want to congratulate you on winning an award.
Oh, thank you.
Excellence in teaching, right?
Yep. I actually get it next Friday. But yeah,
that's
awesome.
The
APGAR award.
So to win that while teaching at West Point, that's not something everybody can say they've done. So congratulations.
I had somebody tell me it was the Heisman of teaching awards.
Oh hell. I know. Wow. I did not know that. Didn't know there was a Heisman of teaching awards, but
me neither, but I'll
way
take
to win it.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So for anybody who was wondering, Jess is actually a good teacher. She has awards to prove it. But
I have 2 now.
Oh, she's got 2. Look at that. Amazing. I had 0 teaching awards, so if you want to send one over, I'll just put it in my office.
A little tape over my name.
Exactly. Max.
Like written like with a giant crayon, like Max.
Yeah. One of those fat permanent markers.
Max is good.
These are my awards from Army. But anyway, we've got a fun episode planned for today. Last week, we had a really interesting talk with David Vorman, our very first guest, on the future of alternative protein and replace lab-grown meats and stuff like that. We're working on getting a few more episodes so we can dig a little bit deeper, but taking time to reach out to people and other potential guests, which we're really excited about. So fingers crossed for those. But today, Jess is going to take the reins in a second and fill us in on some really cool, interesting innovations that came about as a result of World War II, World War I as well, but mostly World War II, and kind of changed the landscape for just like factory work. And there's a lot that involves just government contracts and getting food to the troops. And it's really cool stuff. So I will stop talking now and let you take over, Jess.
I will say before I start, I listened to the episode with the guest speaker, and he was great, and it was a great discussion. When I listened, I thought the way that they need to market these alternative proteins is to hipsters and people that like breweries and make it, local flavor grown chicken or whatever,
I'm trying to think what would be
guy, like that stereotype where the guy in suspenders riding a unicycle hipster, you know what I mean? Yep. That's what they need, but it's alternative proteins.
I think their image is definitely something that they're working on, because I'm even victim of this, where I think of lab grown meats and I think of just people in lab coats messing around with petri dishes and stuff like that.
Like a gray blob. Eat it now.
Yes.
Which is an interesting thing, because it's the same problem that Army in World War II has, or basically the Army in general. How do we feed troops? How do we get them a meal that has the calories and the protein and the carbs that they need in an emergency, but make it look and taste appealing? So it's a similar problem. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's like tie across time.
You're telling me infantry members aren't super excited to get an MRE and dig in?
I mean, they are maybe now in some of the MREs, but it's been a process to get to that point. And a lot of it is going to come out of World War II, which makes sense because, World War II, the Army in America is expanding at like a ridiculous rate. It goes from a couple 100,000 to multi-million, right? I think at the peak, there's 9 million troops, and they're everywhere. American troops are just everywhere. They're in North Africa. They are then in Europe. They're in various parts of the Pacific. They're in Korea. They're in parts of China. They're in the Middle East. They're everywhere. So a huge logistical problem arises. How do we get the Army the food that it needs, and it's still edible, right? It hasn't spoiled, and then it tastes good enough that troops are going to eat it. And the military and the government call on industries to help out. How do we get the logistics behind it? How do we ship? How do we take care of mold, right? How do we get it there so that you can still eat it, or it's shelf stable, or it doesn't need refrigeration? So the Army's quartermasters are given this really hard mission, like, hey, feed everybody.
Right. Simple.
And they're given about $750 to find ways to make that work. Like the innovation part of that, right? So innovation comes out of necessity. So the planners are like, we can't do this internally. We need these contracts. We need people to jump onto this. And the industry within America is called upon. And industries are willing to work with the military for a couple of reasons. One, it's patriotic. Two, there's typically a lucrative government contract behind it. And then three, because food was in such demand, there are rations put on everybody in terms of dairy, eggs, sugar. And when factories can stay open to help the military, they can continue to get those rations. They get the things that they need and can continue to make the products that they are designed to make. One example is Hershey's. Hershey's Mars, like M&M Mars,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They got the military contract in World War I, and Hershey's did not. And Hershey's did not get as much sugar as they wanted, which means that their product was not as sweet as it typically is. So World War II, Hershey vied for the military contract and got it. And their job was to come up with what will now be an energy bar. But they kind of start with the precursor to energy bars. It is a super dense brick of like cocoa powder, basically.
Delicious.
Hershey was asked, make something that has a lot of calories. It will give a boost of energy, but we don't want it to be tasty. We don't want troops to eat this unless it's an emergency. So they make this really gross, powdery brick of cocoa powder for troops to eat. And the troops are like, get out of here.
No.
Yeah, they're like, that's thanks a lot for nothing.
And right, imagine being like, we're getting a package from Hershey. Hooray.
Like, yes.
And that's what you get.
Yeah, and then you're like, what is this? Yeah. And then you
That
can't
was
even
the
eat
real
it.
reason you were at Hershey Park, right? Just doing research.
Yeah. Actually, they did have like a little history tour, but
No, that's cool.
yeah, it was good. Not like, I'm like, well, what about the fire that was started? But they didn't do any of that, but that's okay.
Only the fun stuff.
Yeah, which is fine. And then, so Hershey is one thing. Another is Chef Boyardee, if you've heard of that.
Chef Boyardee.
I know. Chef Boyardee is the quintessential. He's an Italian immigrant. He's trying to bring Italian dishes to America. And Americans are like, this is too spicy. So he starts to like blend out like Italian dishes, and then eventually is the first to make a take-home spaghetti and meatballs type of meal. Chef Boyardee has in the 40s has a factory, right, and making meals, and his factory is part of sending meals over to the troops. Via their website, it says that they had their factory in production 24/7. Wow. And Chef Boyardee felt like, it's his patriotic duty. He's got to do this. He was still the head of the company then, and he's awarded a civilian.
I think it's important to just clarify that Chef Boyardee was, in fact, an actual person.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that until the longest time. I thought it was just like, oh, Boyardee. Haha.
Oh, no. They changed his name, the spelling.
Yeah, the spelling is more like Americanized, but
yeah, it's actually
Boyardee was an actual real person.
Yeah, and he was a chef. Yeah, Boyardee. Yep. Yeah, he the person. So Chef Boyardee is awarded the Civilian Gold Star after the war for his company's efforts. So in the process, a lot of things are still popular today. They started out as a way for the military to feed troops. And when I say feed troops, it starts as an American, but it ends up being like Allied troops as well. One of these inventions is Hormel's Spam. Have you heard of Spam?
I have.
Have you ever had it?
I don't think I have, honestly. You still see commercials today, though, like Spam, sizzled pork, and
Yeah, and there isn't actually like official like what does Spam stand for. Off of Hormel's website, they say that they held a contest and they came up with Spam, and then other people are saying it stands for like shoulder pork and ham or something like that. Yeah,
they just like shoved together. Hormel, that's like the same company that's like the chili and all that, right? I don't think I knew it was Hormel.
Yep. Yeah, same company. So the son of the founder, Jay Hormel, he takes over his father's pig slaughterhouse industry. And there's only certain parts during this time period, like the 30s, where only parts of the pig are being used. So there's quite a bit of waste. And he's looking to like maximize profits. So he's looking at the shoulder meat that was getting thrown away, and he mixes it with water, salt, sugar, and sodium nitrates, and then pushes it into this rectangle can, and it's shelf stable, right? It ends up being shelf stable. It doesn't need to be refrigerated, and it's in packaging that is conducive to filling a box with the most possible.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, maximizing.
So it's perfect for shipping. Yeah. And the Army buys 15 million cans a week during the war.
Damn.
And spam goes everywhere. And it literally saves the Russian army. It will literally save civilian populations in the Pacific. And spam is a huge part of the war effort and how the US is able to win parts over.
I really feel like that should be like its own episode.
Yeah, spam is pretty crazy how it's shipped and how it gets to people that need it. And then, it's a protein that is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Not pork itself, but like to be able to have a protein during the war was tough to get to people all around the world.
Anywhere, it's not going to spoil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Other things that come out of World War II: M&Ms, instant coffee, even the microwave oven. That was an accident.
What?
Yeah. The microwave oven was a weird accident. Again, that could be its whole episode, but it was not a thing that was meant to be. But yeah. And then Cheetos. Cheetos come out of World War II also.
I know the only email we've gotten to the Farms and Frontlines email address is one of my buddies, just all caps, saying, "Give me Cheetos."
Yeah.
So
ask and you shall receive.
So I know you'll be very excited about this one.
Yeah. So Cheetos, to start, like a little bit of cheese history, processed cheese history. So that goes back to like 1911 and into 1912. There's two Swiss cheesemakers. Their names are Walter Gerber and Fritz Stelzer. And they begin messing around with the process of making cheese, adding emulsifying salts and other stuff to make the fat stop separating. And they end up making the first processed cheese. In 1916, James Kraft, the founder of the Kraft Company, is the first person to patent processed cheese. So Kraft owns that. Yeah, I know. Kraft owns that patent and kind of gets the credit for it. In World War I, the U.S. Army buys about 25 million tins of processed cheese, and does pretty well. Holds up pretty well, getting it overseas to the troops in Europe, because it could withstand higher temps, and it could, kind of be on that boat for a while.
Right.
In 1937, Kraft introduces the boxed mac and cheese. Again, another food that like saves lots of lives because it's only 19 cents. It feeds 4 people, and it's something that families could afford and feed their family and feel, at the time they're feeling good about it. Yeah, because when it gets into World War II, there's like nothing, right? There's no dairy, there's no meat.
Yeah.
Everything's in short supply because of the war.
Right.
In 1944, so we're like into World War II, the military buys 50,000 tons of processed cheese from Kraft's parent company, which is called National Dairy Product Corporation. The military was super interested in getting rid of the water in foods. They're dehydrating everything. They're dehydrating fruits, meats, so they could ship it and not worry about mold.
Right.
But they could not figure out how to do it with cheese. So in 1943, but U.S. scientist George Sanders is experimenting. There's a whole big process, right? He grinds up cheese and then bakes it at a higher temperature, and then the result is powdered cheese. So the powdered cheese is born in 1943. At the end of the war, there is a huge surplus of cheese, both processed cheese and powdered cheese. And the military sells it off to grocers. One of the grocers that buys it is Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay is experimenting with cornmeal. I don't know why.
For Frito-Lay chips.
Yeah, for Frito-Lay chips. Well,
or just Fritos.
They're working on a different kind of technology. Again, it's initially developed for the military. It's called extrusion. And it's particularly for creating processed foods that could be stored and transported easily for troops. Extrusion, when it was applied to cornmeal, so it's basically expanding it at a high temperature and then at higher pressures.
Gotcha.
That's about as scientific as I'm going to get.
We clarified on last week's episode that I am not a scientist, so
yeah, same.
there you go.
With the cornmeal, it puffed up, and Frito-Lay covered it in some of that with that powdered cheese that they had oodles and oodles of, and Cheetos were born.
Well, there you go.
And that's how Cheetos came about, and you can thank the military for them.
Thanks, Uncle Sam.
I know.
It's kind of wild because, I mean, as long as I can remember, like, Cheetos have been a thing, and
yeah.
when I worked for PepsiCo, there was this app that we had on our computers, and it was like, ask Chester. And you could like click it, and
no
like,
way.
AI Chester the Cheeto would direct you to like where you needed to go to find the answer to like HR questions or whatever. But it was pretty funny, and my wife kept saying that my boss was Chester the Cheetah. I'm like, well,
that's awesome.
Sure. I think there's so much cool history in food service and stuff like that. I had no idea that Spam ended up playing such a crucial role in not just feeding the troops, but saving, countless villages and like the Red Army and all that kind of stuff. Like that's really cool. And it's not something that they put out there in their marketing. It's
crazy.
Not going to sell boxes of Spam. We fed the Red Army. It's like, okay, well, neat. Cheetos doesn't go out there and be like an army innovation, but
I know, which is too bad.
as a representative of the army, I think they need to change that.
I know, right?
Again, our opinions do not reflect our employers.
Our employers, they are in fact my own.
Yeah, I mean, even that, and like Hershey's getting into the game, and I think it's very interesting that the reason they did so was just because like M&M Mars got the contract and got the good sugar, and Hershey was like, we can't put out a good product. In order to do that, we need to get this government contract. Like it's just a really cool little piece of history that isn't well known.
They held on to that contract for quite a while. I think until the 60s. So
oh dang, okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that time, do you know if M&M Mars also had a contract?
No, not with the Army.
Okay, so
M&Ms do come out of and still to today, actually, the military. There's experiments to try to make the melting point of chocolate much higher than it is. But that's why M&Ms came about, because the thought of putting that not plastic, that chocolate coating over the softer chocolate, so that it melted in your mouth and not in your hands.
Yep.
It came about because the military was trying to find a way to get chocolate to troops without it melting all over the place. Yeah.
Oddly enough, I also worked for M&M Mars. So I do remember like watching like training videos and stuff, and they had the original like TV ads with the guy like melts in your mouth, not in your hands. And then he would like and show there's no chocolate on his hands and be like, wow. So like, you think like, oh, wow, they made it for convenience, but it was also because they needed to feed our troops, and actually at the time, like shipping things was kind of a laborious process. It had to, like, they were shipping these tons and tons of food, it's like just going across the Atlantic or the Pacific to wherever they need to go. It wasn't like a quick Amazon one-day delivery type thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take several weeks for something to get anywhere.
So, I mean, I think that's really cool between Spam, Cheetos, Hershey's, M&M's.
Hershey's, yeah.
I think we learned a lot of little cool food history. How it came out of just, like you said, necessity breeds innovation. And
it's pretty great. And they still are around today.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's pretty cool, and like they've been improved upon. How one improves a Cheeto, I really don't know. Pretty much the perfect snack. But
there is quite the controversy around flaming hot Cheetos.
Oh yeah, no, not a fan. I think that was a step back. My hot take right there.
Yeah.
I also saw
the controversy.
I also saw like there's just so many weird flavors out there. I think I saw Doritos flavored Smart Food popcorn. I'm like, what's happening? Yeah.
Where am I right now? Yeah.
I won't go into it, but some of the stuff I saw coming out of the innovation quarter when I was working for PepsiCo, like they would like have some leftover stuff, be like, hey, you can take this if you want it. Be like,
you're like,
all right. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, yeah, no. The only reason I took this was because it had Venom on it, and he's a cool comic book character. Sounds terrible though.
Yeah, but still. Anyway, all right. So, that's that.
Yeah, so I hope everybody enjoyed that. I thought it was a cool little, just quick sojourn into World War II history, some cool innovations that came from really just necessity of needing to feed people. I think in the future, I would definitely be interested in diving into a full-on episode on spam. I think that's really cool, and just to see how that was shipped and how it saved people and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
If you'd be interested, listeners, please let us know. You can write to us. You can reach out to us on social media, anything like that. We're at Farms and Frontlines on most social media sites. You can reach us at farmsandfrontlines@gmail.com. And you can also now listen to this podcast pretty much anywhere. It's on Amazon Podcasts, on Pocket Casts, it's on iHeartRadio. It's all over the place. So wherever you really listen to your podcast, you can find us. Thank you again so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this little episode. And tune in next week for some more exciting stuff. Jess, I think we're planning on talking about getting a little bit more serious, talking about foreign entities owning American farmland and kind of how that started.
Yeah.
We're just digging a little bit into that.
Exactly. I think that'll be really interesting.
Absolutely.
It's something that we should be talking about, but I don't think we're talking about enough.
Right. So enjoy this fun little episode because we're going to get serious next week. But we do plan on having some more guests, very interesting guests coming onto the show. We really enjoyed having David on. Gotten a lot of feedback that our listeners really enjoyed having him on as well, learning about that topic. So we hope to dive more into that and talk about a few other things as well. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.